Alrighty. Hi guys, how are you?
Doing well.
Good.
Great.
Hi, Nicole.
Hello. And hey everyone on LinkedIn. We're so glad you're joining us on MathCo's LinkedIn Live today. Really looking forward to this conversation. For those of you who may not know, MathCo is a leader in enterprise AI and data transformation, working with our clients on making sure they achieve their objectives. And today, our focus of conversation is really on trends in 2026 in industrial and automotive sectors. So with me today, I have two great panelists, and Anwar and Chandler. You both want to introduce yourselves?
Anwar, do you want to go first?
All right. Thank you for having me, Nicole. Thank you, everyone. It's a privilege to be on the LinkedIn Live and talk to everyone out there. My name is Anwar Al-Taki. I come from the heavy industry and automotive sector. Done a lot of the enterprise work on the data analytics side, and I've been in consulting for quite some time, helping the manufacturing, automotive clients, which is our partners, that we help them into building their AI strategy, their data analytics strategy, and move the needle on the business value side. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you. Chandler?
Yeah, appreciate that. It's an honor to be here with everyone. And I think from my side, Chandler Johnson, I am a client partner of Enterprise AI. My role really focuses on helping our enterprise customers design and also implement effective AI solutions. This day and age, we're focusing very heavily on Agentic AI. Of course, there's other things that we do as well. And my background is actually fairly similar to what Anwar had described. Played a heavy consultant role for almost all of my career. A lot of experience both in the domains of manufacturing, supply chain, as well as verticals of just industrial as a whole. So looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. So while we'll start talking on some questions, but first would love to hear from folks that are listening in. Share with us any of what are some of the big topics that you're working on in AI right now. We'd love to hear about it. So as we get started on some of these topics, and for automotive and industrial companies, a lot of leaders are under pressure right now to standardize platforms, really get things up to par in order to meet the moment in this age of AI. And this is everywhere from like the plant level, product level, as well as with the supply chain, and really it's across the business, right? As we see industry transforming. And so can you guys talk a little bit, what strategic decisions do these organizations need to make to avoid ending up with disconnected AI? We've all been reading the news about pilots that don't scale. So talk a little bit about across engineering, manufacturing, or commercial operations, what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, let me take this, Chandler, and please add in if you have any point there. I'm sure you have seen a lot in your clients too. But based on what I've seen, and this is the privilege of being in consulting, is you see the different speed and different approach to this problem across the industry. And a lot of the learnings that you get from one client, you try to apply it across, and you try to think about where are the companies that are winning. And it all comes back to what we all talk about AI, but AI without strategy doesn't actually converge. And when I've seen it, really the AI strategy scales only when it gets associated with the big rocks. What is the CEO, the C-suite's big rocks that they're trying to clear in front of them? As you mentioned, Nicole, a lot of these pilots in 2024, I would say, and a lot of the companies avoided that in 2025, is because AI wasn't the agenda. It gets approved on the budget, but it's never connected and associated with the big constraints of the company. when the AI strategy gets derivative of what are the big rocks, for example, in automotive, it's a very common theme in most of the companies. You would see manufacturing quality, cost and margin, supply chain, the efficiency on the floor, on the manufacturing floor. Those are the big problems that a lot of these automotive companies are facing, especially after the pandemic. And if the strategy is not connected to these, it does not get the buy-in. And if it gets the buy-in on the pilot, it's very hard to transform that into the actual value. The other dimension I would say is when you're trying to solve a one functional problem inside a one function inside the company, most of these pilots look at that in a siloed ways, and agents execute tasks on a specific function. While what we have seen it really transform really quickly, and it get the big buy-in when you see that all these agents work together on an enterprise context layer, and you build systemic approach to your agentic mesh. So it gets leveraged across the different functions. The last pillar I would say is the standardization. And I think everybody agrees that we need to standardize the platform, standardize the data, standardize the way that we build our context layer. But the speed in the speed of the agents, you have to allow the autonomy of the decision layer. So decision layer has to mature, and you have to give it more autonomy after you standardize your data and context layer. So these are the three themes that I've seen that really impacting heavily the successful AI strategy transformation. Chandler?
Yeah, just to add on, I think I'll coin the phrase "start with strategy." I think that's a great starting point that is absolutely the make or break for an organization. A lot of times, whenever you're trying to tie any AI initiatives to enterprise strategy, oftentimes, especially if it's executive company level strategy, enterprise level strategy, I mean, you're typically taking on very big initiatives, and I think that's where I've seen a lot of clients, at least in, let's say, 24, 25, be a little hesitant or scared to fully embrace or take on that large of a challenge. But a lot of times that's actually where the value is. And so I think it's about just designing first of all, going after the strategy, but then designing your, let's say if it's agentic AI, designing your agentic AI program to be set up for success in order to capture that value. I've had a peek at your list of questions, Nicole, so I won't go too much more into that since I know we're going to cover that, but I think that's a dot that we'll connect later in this conversation.
Yeah, no, both of your answers are really resonating. I think that I've seen as well, talking about start with strategy, of course, and Anwar, your point about connecting to these big rocks in the C-suite. I think that's so critical. And I'd say it's not just a big thing that I'm seeing change is it's not just now the data and AI leaders saying, okay, how do I connect to the pillars? But I almost feel like it's the C-suite meeting in the middle there. Where for companies being successful right now, there's such a big piece of it, even at the most senior leadership in the company, also having an AI strategy that isn't just, hey, what's your strategy, right? So it's and going to the data leaders for that, but really trying to have that interconnected approach. And so I think that's, certainly something that's a differentiator today. Chandler, you touched on having some more to say. I'm wondering if do you have some more to comment on, like what mistakes do you see companies making today when they rush towards autonomous decision making?
Right. Yeah, it's a great question. Honestly, I think something that I've seen a lot recently, and recently meaning 2026, is companies trying to jump fully into a full agentic designer solution. What I mean by that is, I saw 2024 as the not the birth of AI, but I would say certainly and the next evolution of AI. 25 was kind of the era of a lot of POCs, experiments. 26, I think I'm seeing a lot of companies focusing on more large programs? How do I design an agentic system? And that's good. I think, like I just mentioned, that's where I see a lot of the value being captured from enterprises. However, the challenge is you have to approach it in a very intelligent way. If you jump straight to agentic, there's a lot of risk there, right? If I look at a specific decision, I don't think it's a 0 or 1. Like, it's not binary. I think there is levels of risk to a given decision, and we have to think of it that way when designing our agentic systems. You know, for example, if something is moderately risky, it doesn't have to be either fully agentically decided / handled, or human. What I can do is I can design the system that will by default agentically handle it. But when I perceive a higher risk, then I can hand that off to a human. And there's many different ways to do that. I can, assign, certain risk thresholds, for example, things like that, during which then an agent will actually handle it. I can assign, I'll basically call that like a human escalation mechanism, or something like that. And I think related to that, agentic systems really need to be audited when you're in the design phase of your system, and not developing and deploying. So making sure that you understand what those risks are, what could actually cause harm if it's customer facing, especially, right? What could cause harm to that customer, even internally. That's really important. And what is, use the term like acceptable failure actually look like? It's okay if there is some amount of failure or error. We're not going to get everything perfect. That should never be the objective. But I have to make sure that I'm avoiding really catastrophic mistakes. So those are a couple of things that I would say, Nicole, that I've just seen mistakes companies are making, and I think learning from rapidly as we go further into 2026. Anwar, anything else you wanted to add on to that?
Yeah, it actually reminds me 20, 30 years ago with all the manufacturing companies when they were moving into the ERP systems, right? They're all trying to map their business processes that never been written. And this is something very similar. Another transformation that we're moving from static system into more agentic. And in order for those agents to make those decisions, they have to understand the business processes. They have to have the context. And I would add, Chandler, that I have seen a lot of the companies that they were pushed into move in 2025 in a very high speed because it was not scaled in 2024, and high speed on AI and agentic. And then you would see the no clear decision ownership or accountability. Who owns the decisions that the agent is actually making? And then when those decisions are made, how are they going horizontally across the other functions that they are impacted with this process? So spot on. I would say that ownership, that accountability on the decisions that those agents are making. This is one of the big mistakes that we're seeing.
Agreed.
Yeah, I love that point. Who owns the decisions that the agents are making? I think that's it's a really good tidbit.
Yeah, and I would say autonomous driving is the same, right? Everybody is trying to decide on those.
Absolutely. So what's separating these AI pilots that scale from those that don't leave experimentation? Now that we've talked about some of these mistakes that you're seeing.
That's the $1 million question, right? I think there's several things actually. I think one is maybe mindset. So companies that are approaching agentic AI or just AI in general to prove the technology rather than to actually change an outcome. So similar to, I think, Anwar, your original point you were making. I mean, it has to be tied to strategy, and I guess said differently, like accomplishing just a certain outcome, right? Like what am I actually trying to accomplish? I need to work backwards from that. That's where it starts. Not with, I need to build a chatbot, not with, I need to build some agentic system. Like that is setting you up to fail. And I think another thing I would say is a very effective design before you actually develop the solution, which I touched on just a second ago, but let me go a little deeper. I was actually on on a trip with a client just last week, where we spent a week in a workshop designing our agentic system that we're building. I won't go into specifics of the client for confidentiality reasons, but just to give an idea of the extent of which we were designing before I actually get into it. I mean, we went through basically the current state workflows. We mapped out these process maps across like many pieces of paper. We actually did it on paper. We mapped out who were the personas, and then what are in the future state. I'm going to need redesigned roles because I'm changing a lot of what I'm actually doing. So the roles of today will not be the roles of tomorrow. What do those roles actually look like? What does that mean in terms of the future state workflows? How do I, like, all of the decisions that I'm making throughout the processes? What are those decisions? Am I clear on those? And then is it something that should be human in the loop? Should it be fully agentic, fully human? Things like that. What are my solution components? Like, all of that basically is what I would call design, that you need a very clear, not just a 30,000 foot view on what we're going after, but a very clear operational design with alignment from everyone that will be involved in that process in the future before you actually get started developing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, so we're seeing these leaders in industrial automotive really doubling down on AI. They're investing heavily, including in like the robotics and automation on the factory floor. So we're going to shift gears to the factory floor a bit here, but as AI agents are increasingly sitting on top of these systems, planning, coordinating, optimizing in real time, from what are you seeing across clients you work with? What needs to change at like the strategy and operating model level to ensure this becomes integrated in systems versus just another layer of complexity?
Yeah, I will take that. So let me have a step back a little bit into 2025 was the year of agentic, right? It was the scale of agentic and having the orchestration layer across all your agents and Gen AI and AI systems. What I've seen and what I've read recently and a lot of the trend that we're seeing with our clients is 2026 is going to be around physical AI. It's going to be around the humanoid robots that's going to be deployed. And for context, we have had robots in manufacturing for the last 20, 30 years. You have Fanuc, you have ABB, you have Siemens, you have all these companies that they have built robots. These robots have very specific programs, very complex programs. They have very specific instructions. When they see an obstacle in front of them, what is the different path that they need to go through their code to avoid that obstacle? While when we're going into physical AI and robots that's empowered by generative AI models, and generative AI, today we have text, we have image generation, we have all the models that lives inside our software level, right? They don't live in our physical world. So when you're moving those LLMs to interact with robots, actuators, it need to understand the gravity. It need to understand the actuator's strength to not crush the product that they are holding every single time, because this is not a machine that's holding the same exact product every time. So a lot of complexity inside that, but there have been a lot of research in 2025 that I'm seeing a big trend going into 2026 is actually those going to go into scale. And when we talk about AI systems that power physical world and lives in the 3D world, the complexity becomes tremendous because you're adding all the complexity of the LLM that had been built or your agents that now need to interact not only with decisions and data and simulation, it's actually interacting with multimodal agents that are sitting inside those robots, collecting data and making actions. So definitely this is doubling down, and companies that are doubling down on physical AI in 2026 are the companies that's going to reinvent their manufacturing floor, reinvent their manufacturing facilities, and how does it interact with the enterprise agents that we have built in 2025? There's a lot to figure out. There's a lot to learn, and how to scale across this amazing revolution that we're going towards.
Yeah, that's a great point, Anwar. And similarly, if you think about the evolution you were talking about, the 20 years ago, honestly more than that, but robots were being brought onto the shop floor, and now what that's turning into. I think a connected point to that is just rethinking the workforce strategy as well. It's not that, in my opinion at least, it's not that AI is eliminating jobs. It might look like that at the surface level, but certainly in my opinion, the myth. I think it's just changing the jobs. It's removing a lot of low value tasks, to your point, and then replacing those with high value tasks, so that your, let's say, shop floor operators, I mean, they're less about just executing, and they're more about orchestration. How do I orchestrate the set of things that I actually need to get done?
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's more of a supervision. It's elevating the job. It's making it more efficient, faster, and higher quality. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
Agreed.
Listening to you guys, I feel like we're living in the future, talking about the human AI connection. But this is really.
I'm sorry, Nicole. I will say it is. We're seeing it in the actual client that they are thriving toward that. What people's gonna see in 2-3 years, it's what's getting built today, and that is at MathCo is we are very much in the trenches of augmenting, automating, building agents that helps from the data engineering level, where the traditional data engineering lives, all the way into manufacturing floors, because. This is most of our, I think we have a lot of different backgrounds, and we've all been in the industry for quite some, in the different industries for quite some times, and understand those problems. It's really a fascinating journey, and it's transformation that I would say I've heard that from one of the leaders is AI will not eliminate jobs. AI, the person who knows AI better than you will eliminate your job. I think that's what's all coming into place. Is AI is an empowerment tool.
And funny enough, even though I know you're saying that we're in the trenches, which we are, to me, even I would have to agree with Nicole and say that it does feel a little bit futuristic. Probably because in the back of my mind, I'm comparing where we're at / that vision, like you said, we're building out the vision into actual deployable assets and systems, for the next, that are going to be starting to be used in 26, 7, et cetera. But at the same time, I think it's the speed of evolution that is causing that perception of, we're living in the future. Every single year, I'd say the I guess pace of how fast we are advancing the technology just keeps accelerating and accelerating. And to me, that's very exciting.
Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. Yeah, for all of you who've joined us today, go ahead and let us know what your key takeaways were. I'll say for me, my key takeaways today, really talking about start with strategy, aligning to those big rocks, to larger company objectives for that AI strategy. And then, part of that is figuring out what are these processes that AI has to actually improve, right? What are those measurable outcomes we want to hit? And then getting into the governance of it. Who owns the decisions that the AI is making, especially as we move into the agent, as we consider agentic AI in particular. And I love that point as well that you guys made about designing at the operational level, right? So it's yes, start from the top, but for the strategies to be successful, the companies that are able to differentiate right now are really able to connect that back to what people are doing every day. So thank you both so much for sharing your perspectives with me and with our community here today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Thank you.